The restaurant went silent the moment she walked in, not the kind of silence that comes from admiration but the awkward kind people try to hide behind polite smiles. Her hair looked deliberately messy, her oversized coat swallowed her figure, and her glasses were so thick they almost distorted her eyes. She chewed gum loudly and scanned the elegant dining hall with an expression that clearly said she did not care what anyone thought, and that was exactly the point, because the woman standing there was not who she seemed. Her name was Evelyn Carter, and in the world outside this restaurant she was known as the youngest CEO to ever run Carter Global, a billion-dollar technology empire. But tonight she was pretending to be someone people would instantly reject, ugly, rude, unpleasant, anything that would end the blind date her board of directors had practically forced her into. Evelyn walked toward the table reserved for the date and dropped into the chair with a dramatic sigh. The man across from her looked up from the menu. He was not what she expected. He was not dressed like the arrogant investors she usually met. He wore a simple shirt with rolled sleeves, and his hands carried the quiet strength of someone used to working hard. His dark hair was slightly messy, and his eyes held a warmth that felt strangely calm. In the middle of the luxurious restaurant, Evelyn rolled her eyes loudly and smacked her gum again. "You must be Daniel," she said without enthusiasm. The man smiled politely. "Yes, Daniel Harper, and you must be Evelyn." She shrugged like it was the most boring thing in the world. Unfortunately, Daniel did not look offended. He simply closed the menu and studied her for a moment, as if trying to understand something deeper than what she was showing. Evelyn leaned back in her chair and spoke with exaggerated boredom. "Let me make this easy for you. I hate fancy restaurants, I hate small talk, and I especially hate blind dates. So if you want to leave now, you are free." Most men would have already walked away, but Daniel surprised her again. Instead of leaving, he laughed softly. "That actually sounds like the most honest thing anyone has said to me all week." Evelyn frowned. Honesty was not supposed to work in her favor tonight. She leaned forward and decided to push harder. "Good, because I am also rude, impatient, and I probably will not remember your name tomorrow." Daniel shrugged calmly. "That is all right, I forget names too sometimes." She stared at him. Was he serious? Was this man immune to irritation? The waiter arrived and Daniel ordered 2 simple meals instead of the expensive items on the menu. Evelyn scoffed loudly. "Wow, you really know how to impress a woman." Daniel smiled again. "I am not trying to impress you." That answer caught her off guard. Most men spent the entire evening trying to prove themselves, but Daniel looked completely comfortable being himself for the first time. Evelyn felt slightly curious. "Why are you even here?" she asked bluntly. Daniel leaned back in his chair and thought for a moment. "My daughter signed me up for the blind date website," he said. "She thinks I work too much and do not meet new people." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Your daughter?" Daniel nodded proudly. "Emma, she is 7. And suddenly the hard sarcastic expression on Evelyn's face softened just a little. 7. There was something unexpectedly gentle about the way he said it. Daniel continued speaking. "Her mother passed away 3 years ago, so it has mostly been just the 2 of us." He said it simply, without drama, but the quiet strength in his voice carried the weight of those years. Evelyn looked down at the table. She had expected arrogance or annoyance from this man. Instead, she found honesty and something else, kindness. She quickly covered her reaction by chewing gum louder. "Sounds exhausting," she muttered. Daniel chuckled. "Sometimes it is, but Emma is worth every second." He pulled out his phone and showed a photo of a little girl with bright eyes holding a drawing. Evelyn tried not to care, but something inside her shifted. The picture showed a small girl holding a crayon drawing of a man and a child standing under a giant sun. "Our family," Daniel said proudly. Evelyn forced a sarcastic tone. "Your art critic daughter might want to work on those proportions." Daniel laughed again. "She is still learning." The strange thing was that Evelyn realized she had not laughed with someone like this in years. Not with investors, not with executives, not with the polished people who surrounded her corporate life. The dinner continued, and despite all her efforts to remain rude, Daniel never seemed bothered. He simply talked about Emma, about his work as a mechanic, about how he rebuilt old motorcycles in his spare time. Evelyn occasionally made sarcastic comments, but Daniel treated them like harmless jokes. At one point he asked gently, "So what do you actually do?" Evelyn, she froze for a second. If she told him the truth, the entire disguise would collapse, so she shrugged carelessly. "Nothing important." Daniel nodded. "Sometimes those are the most important jobs." She blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" He smiled thoughtfully. "The people who say their work is not important are often the ones doing something meaningful without needing recognition." Evelyn felt a strange pressure in her chest. If he only knew. By the end of the dinner she realized something unexpected. She had forgotten to make him leave. Daniel paid the bill and stood up. "I enjoyed tonight," he said sincerely, "even if you hated every minute of it." Evelyn crossed her arms. "I did." Daniel smiled. "Then I hope your next blind date is even worse, so this one will look better in comparison, and with that he walked out of the restaurant, leaving Evelyn sitting there staring at the empty chair. For the first time in years she felt something she had carefully avoided: curiosity about someone who had not cared about appearances. The next morning Evelyn returned to her real life. The glass walls of Carter Global headquarters reflected the power and perfection she was known for. Assistants rushed through hallways. Executives waited nervously for meetings, and investors followed. Every word she said. No one there would have recognized the rude woman from the restaurant, but Evelyn kept thinking about Daniel and the little girl named Emma. A week later something unexpected happened. Her company launched a community initiative repairing old infrastructure in struggling neighborhoods. One of the repair contractors listed on the project reports had a familiar name: Daniel Harper. Evelyn stared at the file for a long moment, then she made a decision that surprised even herself. She visited the site personally. The small repair shop smelled like oil and metal, and there he was. Daniel stood beside a motorcycle laughing with a little girl who looked exactly like the photo Emma. When Daniel looked up and saw Evelyn, his eyes widened in recognition but not in judgment, just surprise. Evelyn removed the ridiculous glasses she had worn that night. I guess I should introduce myself properly, she said quietly. Daniel tilted his head. Evelyn Carter, CEO of Carter Global. The shop fell silent, but Daniel only smiled slowly. So that is why you hated blind dates? Evelyn nodded. Something like that. Emma ran forward curiously. Daddy, who is she? Daniel thought for a moment before answering. Someone who tried very hard to hide who she really is. Evelyn looked down at the little girl, and for the first time in years she felt completely seen, not as a CEO, not as a powerful woman, just as a person. And somehow that was the most terrifying and beautiful thing she had ever felt, because despite all her effort to push him away, the single dad had seen past the disguise, and he had quietly fallen for the real woman behind it. Not the power, not the wealth, just her. And sometimes the people who love us the most are the ones who recognize us even when we try our hardest to disappear. And that was the beginning of a story Evelyn Carter never planned to write, but one that would change her life forever.